Number 10. Darkseid is called. In the Snyder cut of the DCEU film Justice League, we learn that the heroes don't actually save the day. In the original version of the tale, they kinda lose and are too late to prevent the Mother Box from calling out to Darkseid, who arrives on Earth. The Mother Box explodes, seemingly killing our heroes. However, there is one hope left. While technically in this timeline they lose, Barry Allen, aka the Flash, manages to use his superpowers to race beyond the speed of light, turning back time and giving everyone a second chance. Also showcasing how much of a powerhouse the hero can be and making him one of the most powerful superheroes on the team in this version of the story. So although for a moment they lost, the Flash gives the team a second chance, and this time they do manage to save the day, with Cyborg preventing the Mother Boxes from coming together and reaching out across the cosmos with Superman's help, and Aquaman and Wonder Woman defeating Steppenwolf, who dies while being sent back through the portal to Darkseid on Apocalypse. But that first time around, they all likely died. Number 9. Captain Britain vs. Iska. The Ten of Swords tournament, or the Otherworld tournament, was not what many expected, especially when it came to how poorly our friends over on Krakoa did. I mean, after all, they were supposed to be the heroes in this event, as they faced off against their villainous mutant brethren of Morocco, who were also under the influence of the Amenthi demons led by Annihilation. And it all started with Krakoa's ability to lose hard on that very first battle in this story. I don't know about you, but I was pretty shook after reading that first fight when I was reading this as it was all coming out. The fight went down between Captain Britain, Betsy Braddock, representing Krakoa, and Iska the Unbeaten, a champion of Morocco. The fight lasted 4 pages, and Betsy was swiftly and easily defeated by Iska, with both her sword and herself being shattered into pieces. And friends, before I move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to show some support for us over on another platform, head on over to Facebook where you can give us a like, a follow. We really appreciate it when you do, and we have lots of exclusive content coming your way over there, so yes. Number 8. A League of One. Superheroes don't always lose to supervillains in the comics. In the case of the JLA story A League of One, this time around the League is actually defeated by one of their own, Wonder Woman. However, Wonder Woman doesn't do this to actually cause them harm or kill them, but simply to get them out of the way. This is because the League is facing a dragon, and there's basically a prophecy surrounding that fight that it will cost the band of heroes their lives. Wonder Woman not only manages to defeat the League, even disposing of Superman, who she weakens and then sends on a mission to save the others who she's left in danger, but also does manage to sidestep her doomed fate. Sort of. Wonder Woman was willing to die in the League's place, hoping to spare the rest of the team, but in taking on the dragon by herself, she manages to actually avoid dying. At least dying permanently. She dies momentarily, but is revived by Superman, who arrives just in time to bring her back from the brink of death by giving her life-saving CPR. So she died, but only for a minute.
Number 7. Spider-Man. Coming in hot from the Amazing Spider-Man 700.3, The Black Lodge Part 1. We open in Queens, New York. It's past 2 in the morning. Peter is regretting having seconds at Aunt May's. He's just trying to go home, but now he's got to go face to face with Firebrand. Peter even realizes that already this fight has gone on for too long. Usually this would be a piece of cake, but Peter ate too much cake. He was actually too full. He was tired. Now this is tedious. And then when Firebrand gets a hold of Peter's neck, it really starts to hurt. Firebrand unloads everything that he has, and then he sees Peter's suit start to melt and then rip apart. It's actually really brutal and pretty gory. By the time help arrives, he's unrecognizable. The cleanup crew literally thinks he's another supervillain. They're like, get him out of here, this burnt, crispy man. Firebrand 2.0, whoever you are, bye. Peter received 3rd-degree burns on 80% of his body. Aunt May, where's the aloe? We need some aloe stat.
Number 6. Tower of Babel. In the Tower of Babel event, Ra's al Ghul manages to use Batman's own intel and files on the Justice League to defeat them. No, really. Batman, being the prepared and paranoid man that he is, basically is revealed to have kept files on each member of the Justice League, noting their weaknesses and also containing contingency plans for how to best defeat them should they ever turn to the side of evil. Ross gains access to Batman's systems and is able to retrieve these detailed files and plans via his daughter Talia. He uses this information to take on and defeat all members of the Justice League, even managing to seemingly distract Batman by robbing the graves of his parents. In the end, the Justice League recover and win the day, but they are none too pleased with Batman, whose secret intel in essence almost single-handedly allowed Al Ghul to destroy the whole team. Number 5. DC vs. Vampires. DC vs. Vampires is another monster mashup of an alternate reality where the heroes of that world are overrun by monsters. In this case, the monsters being, you guessed it, vampires. The loses start, of course, with the very first issue, as the premise for this tale is set up. Okay. Premise. Mary, Queen of Blood, has been killed, and despite being a villain, she was the only one holding back vampires from all-out war. Andrew Bennett, aka I-Vampire, attempts to hunt her killers down in order to find out what is going on and why, and discovers a plot of vampire kind to take over Earth, not just starting a war, but almost completely eradicating the human race, at least eradicating their powers. The plan involves taking over the planet, subjugating the human population, and keeping them around only to treat them basically like cattle. Andrew ends up getting proof, a vial of one survivor's blood, Lex Luthor, which also seems to be weaponized against vampires. He also then decides to head out to the Justice League to warn them, but in the end he is defeated by an already turned Hal Jordan. Hal's evil again, oh gosh, who would have guessed? And that's just the beginning of the story, so it gets a lot more vampires taking over the world, if you like that jam. I personally like that jam. I'm like, yeah. Put me in that jam. I like when vampires take over the world. Let's go. Number 4. Death of the Justice League. The Death of the Justice League has kicked off as of issue 75 of the current Justice League series, which started back in 2018. And wow, it is rough. What happens to the Justice League? Well, they face off against Pariah, who himself is from one of the first worlds to be targeted during the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths. He was cursed with basically watching all these worlds die again and again, unable to stop it, despite being one of the first people to warn everyone that Crisis on Infinite Earths was coming. Now, with the multiverse reset following the events of Death Metal, Pariah claims that he sees the signs of the crisis happening again. Desperate to prevent this, his plan is to wipe the slate clean when it comes to the heroes, so that the possible new anti-Monitor who will come into existence will have no reason to continue with the crisis. Seems like some flawed logic to me, but this man has also seen some, so I understand his desperation to do whatever he thinks will work when it comes to avoiding another crisis.
Number 3. Green Lantern. Now this one comes from Justice League issue 5. It's been referred to as the Punch since. In this comic, Batman comes in to take over the Justice League International, and Guy Gardner, Green Lantern, doesn't share the same enthusiasm as the rest of the team. For more than one issue, he makes it very clear that he doesn't like this new leader. So naturally, this conflict was growing, and although Batman was obviously a better fit for the role, he challenged Batman to a fight without the use of his power ring, and then Batman proceeded to knock him out with one punch. Of course, he's Batman, and without the ring, you're just a guy. You're just a regular Guy Gardner. Blue Beetle even jumped up. He got pumped, and he started yelling, one punch, one punch, one punch, just adding insult to injury, literally. This is a great moment, an even greater lesson, but Green Lantern getting knocked out by a human punch shouldn't have happened in the first place. Don't start fights you can't win without the only thing that makes you win those fights. I don't know, just my advice.
Number 2. Final Crisis, which actually apparently wasn't so final, as we have another crisis headed our way now, known as Dark Crisis. But regardless of whether or not it was actually final, Final Crisis was definitely a bad time for Earth. In this story, Darkseid actually succeeds in obtaining and releasing the anti-life equation on Earth. He puts it on the internet where it can be easily seen and then spread. Those who see it basically lose their will to live, becoming enslaved to Darkseid and his will, instead of having their own. Well, in the end, the heroes do manage to break free from the influence of Darkseid and the anti-life equation, defeating Darkseid in the end with a Radion bullet. Darkseid still manages to enslave all of Earth and many of its heroes, for a time being seen as the victor. Number 1. Life 9 of Moira X. Well, this life in the end seemingly gave mutants the information needed to beat the rise of the Sentinels and of AI, it also was a world where they had lost much. If anything, it actually set the stage for the reset of Moira's 10th life, where mutants supposedly won. However, even that victory would be revealed to be more complicated, as Moira's true motives were revealed during the events of the 2021 Inferno series, and it turns out her motives were actually to kinda end mutant kind in a nicer way. Still, just taking this world and this continuity as it is, the mutants here have almost all been exterminated. In this life, Moira joined forces with Apocalypse in an attempt to make a final stand against the all-powerful Nimrod. They would not be successful in killing Nimrod, who had killed so many mutants and had also worked to oppress the humans as well. They would only manage to retrieve the information on how and when the Nimrod came to be, allowing them to succeed, hopefully, in Moira's 10th life, where she and mutant kind had failed in her 9th. However, we also know that that didn't really work out because Nimrod does exist in her 10th life, so basically are the mutants kinda screwed? I think maybe they are. Number 10. Iris West is killed by Professor Zoom. That's right, Professor Zoom actually succeeded at one point in killing the love of Barry Allen Allen's life, Iris West. Eobard Thawne, how dare you? And it would only be fixed by a continuity reset basically. Well, and prior to that, Barry Allen basically dipping from his own reality to go live in the future of the 30th century with an alternate future version of Iris who was kind of made to just exist for him having been reborn there. So it's kind of like his Iris but also not, if that makes sense. And if it doesn't, I mean, fair enough, it's pretty confusing. Iris died after Barry and Iris were married, and after she knew about his secret identity. Professor Zoom, as he was known then, ended up simply finding Iris at a party and phasing his hand through her head to kill her instantly. This loss hurt Barry so much that later on, when he found love with Fiona Webb, who he was engaged to marry, when Professor Zoom attacked them on their wedding day, Barry could not take it and responded by killing the villain. It was after this and a following trial for Barry Allen, where he was actually charged with manslaughter because, you know, he killed Thawne, that Barry left the main reality to go be happy with the Iris of the 30th century. Although that would all get wiped away following the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths, but anyways, ain't that just how it goes when crises come a-knockin'. Number 9. Sisterhood of Mutants. In case you were wondering what was going on in the thumbnail from our previous top 10 times superheroes lost list, I'm here to answer that for you now. What's going on there is Lady Mastermind is in essence keeping Emma Frost trapped in kind of like an illusion, so Emma's like trapped in her own mind. Don't worry though, the White Queen's defeat would only be temporary. This was during the creation of the villainous mutant team known as the Sisterhood of Mutants. Yeah, you might know about the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, but did you know there is a Sisterhood too? It was led by none other than the Goblin Queen herself, Madeline Pryor, who had a plan for how to deal with everyone as she invaded the X-Men's headquarters. Her plan for Emma was for Lady Mastermind to keep Frost trapped within her own mind by using illusions. This, by the way, is also at a time where Emma Frost is actually one of the good guys, not the bad guys, just to be clear. However, Emma would ultimately fight back against Lady Mastermind and find a way out of this when she surprised Mastermind with her new secondary mutation, her diamond form, which makes her immune to any kind of psionic attack. Emma also kicked butt in her diamond form, landing blows that knocked Lady Mastermind into next week. Yeah, I would not want to be hit by a diamond form Emma Frost. That would hurt a lot. Diamonds are really painful, I'm sure, to be punched with. I mean, I assume a lot of things are, but diamonds especially. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want another list where we talk about the times the superheroes lost, honestly, I didn't think I was going to be able to come up with many of them, but the more I do these lists, the more things come into my mind about all of the times superheroes have lost. So let me know in the comments and maybe we'll do a part 3. Number 8. Dark Avengers. Sometimes heroes lose, not when villains win against them, but just when villains win in general. That was in essence the case with what happened when it came to the creation of the Dark Avengers. The Dark Avengers were the team of Norman Osborn, who probably just called them, you know, Avengers. No dark implications from his side. That would be pretty suspicious if it's like, hey guys, look at my team, these are the Dark Avengers. Don't worry, they're totally great people and none of them are villains. Don't worry about it. Seems a little suspect. Their editorial name though was definitely the Dark Avengers from a reader's standpoint, so that's how we know them. This team of villains marketed as heroes came to be after Osborn was given the reins to create his own organization after the fall of S.H.I.E.L.D. Why Norman Osborn, formerly known as Major Villain Green Goblin? Because at the time, he was being celebrated as a hero after defeating Queen Veronki, leader of the Skrull secret invasion on live television broadcast. Norman created his own organization known as Hammer, which was an acronym that he just liked. It actually doesn't even stand for anything. He was just like, I like the name Hammer, make that make sense, let's not worry about it. He also created his own evil Avengers team known as the Dark Avengers during a period referred to as Dark Reign. So if you want to go check it out, you can look up Dark Avengers, you can look up Dark Reign, you can read some cool stuff. Number 7. Emperor Doom. In this story, Dr. Doom succeeds in taking over the world by using the powers of the Purple Man, who he keeps as his prisoner. This might sound like a lot to put on Purple Man, aka Zebediah Killgrave, whose powers aren't generally depicted as being capable of working on a global scale. However, Doom manages to boost Purple Man's power while also taking it for himself by trapping him within a large psychoprism prison. Surprisingly, Earth actually does pretty well under the rule of Doom. Hunger, crime, and war are pretty much all eradicated under his rule, but at the high cost, of course, of free will of every individual on the planet. In the end, Doom isn't defeated, but actually chooses to relinquish control, becoming bored of the monotony of ruling without any opposition. Number 6. Death of Thor. You could say the death of Thor is basically inevitable. When it comes to the world of the Norse gods of Asgard, many of their demises are ruled by prophetic fate. Thor is no exception. We learn this in his fight against his uncle, Kulborson, the Serpent, in Fear Itself. During the Fear Itself event, Kulborson escapes from his prison and rises again. The condemned and long imprisoned brother of Odin once more rises to power by feeding on the fear of the people of Earth, naming his own champions who are each gifted a hammer. Thor in turn is destined to battle his uncle and in so doing unfortunately die. Despite Odin's protests at his son attempting to save Midgard, Thor does do battle with the Serpent, saving Midgard, aka Earth, but at the cost of his own life. That is, of course, until he's next resurrected, as so often happens with our favorite heroes in comics. Sometimes you just gotta defeat a demigorge and then you're back to life. You know how it goes. Man, comics.
Number 5. Jason Todd. Of course this is going to be on the list. A Death in the Family is a 4-part storyline written by Jim Starlin and published in 1988. It contains perhaps one of the biggest, darkest moments in DC Comics history because we see the Joker beat the second Robin, Jason Todd. And when I say beat him, I mean he beat him with a crowbar and then used an explosive for good measure. He was a goner, for sure. And also, it was your parents' fault. Pause this video, go yell at them, come back, like it, click play. Yeah, DC left it up to readers how this story ends for Robin. Nowadays, fans are coming together on Twitter to see director cuts of movies that haven't even been released yet. So it's a little better now. We have a bit more of a squad. The actual beatdown, of course, is awful, but emotionally the Joker destroys the boy wonder as well. He used Jason Todd's birth mother, he blackmailed her in order to get closer to Jason, and it worked. Betrayed by his birth mother, and then the Joker too killed her. Double whammy, triple whammy. 4 whammies, I don't know, all the whammies.
Number 4. Purple Man for President. Purple Man's presidency takes place in an alternate reality of Earth 460, and it's actually his rise to power that also creates another alternate universe, a very famous one in fact, you could say. The reality of Earth 311, aka the 1602 reality. This is because Purple Man initially is imprisoning and killing all heroes alive who still oppose him. But with Captain America, Kilgrave sees a greater threat there. If he kills Cap, Cap will basically become a martyr to the people. So instead, Purple Man simply removes Cap completely from the playing board, but not in such a way that the populace can't rally around, Cap's defeat or death. Kilgrave sends Rogers back to the year 1599, and thereby accidentally creates a superhero reality set in the past. That of 1602. Number 3. Age of Apocalypse. While the Age of Apocalypse does eventually end, this reality is based on the whole idea of what the world would be like if the big bad villain won, and by big bad villain, we of course mean Apocalypse this time around. Which is precisely what happens here. These events are actually all set into motion by Legion, who accidentally causes the death of his father, Professor X. Legion traveled back in time with a plan to kill Magneto, but Professor X shields Magneto against Legion's attack, dying instead in his place. Apocalypse ends up attempting to take over the world earlier on in his timeline in this universe, the AOA reality of Earth 295. Magneto is the only one who attempts to oppose Apocalypse, and as such, En-Sabah-Nur is mainly successful in his attempt for world domination. Apocalypse would oppress humanity, seeing superpowered beings as superior, and it would be many years before his reign of terror was ended. Number 2. Time runs out. In some cases, antagonists aren't so much people aiming to defeat heroes, but are instead simply seeming natural occurring disasters which cannot be stopped. Sometimes that's the villain of the story. No matter how hard our heroes try, they just can't beat it. That is essentially how Time Runs Out ends, with Iron Man and Captain America being crushed by the unavoidable doom that is the Incursions. Literally crushed. The final incursion smooshed Earth 616 and Earth 1610 together, seemingly ending both universes. However, in the end, Dr. Doom would step up to the plate, accepting the power of Molecule Man and defying the Beyonders by saving the multiverse and creating his own battle world. But before all of that went down, everyone was trying to figure out how to stop these incursions, and ultimately were pretty much failing at doing so. In the end, it came down to infighting between Tony and Steve as everyone else prepared their lifeboats, hoping to preserve at least a few of the best of them. As Steve blamed Tony and the two fought on, the incursions arrived, squishing them and seemingly, at least momentarily, ending everything, but not so much in the end. Number 1. Deceased. If you thought Marvel Zombies was bleak, wait till you head to the DC version of that reality, Deceased. Here, instead of everyone being infected by a traditional zombie virus, it's more comic codified than that. In Deceased, the heroes and villains of the world instead become overtaken by the anti-life equation, which in this case turns them into hyper-violent, seemingly mindless beings driven only by rage. Basically, different versions of zombies. Poor Cyborg even ends up kind of as patient zero in this, spreading said virus to the rest of the population and infecting many beloved heroes the world over.
Kicking off the list at number 10, The Man of Steel, Superman. Superman Batman Volume 1 Issue 44. The Strange Favor storyline begins with a movie shoot. How exciting, I wonder what they're filming. Well, they're filming a Superman Batman movie called World's Finest, which has a pretty good ring to it. I'm already intrigued. It feels like Tropic Thunder almost at first. These other guys are playing these superheroes. Batman's being played by a former Bond actor in that universe, Jason Wish, and he's going for it. His eyes are all watery. He's explaining this made up origin, and Superman offside, like the Superman and the Batman, are watching them film from afar, and Batman isn't really into this whole idea. He doesn't like how they don't know his true story, and now they're just making stuff up. But Superman reassures them that it's only because they're interested in the mysterious bat. Out of nowhere, Livewire comes in, who's almost as evil as LimeWire. Almost. And then she takes Jason as hostage, demanding that she receives half of his $12 million pay, which is a pretty big chunk of money. Robert Pattinson's only getting $5 million for the next Batman, but he's getting 20 for Batman 2, so it's okay. So the Superman flies down and intervenes, and then he gets surprised when the prop kryptonite on set gets blasted with electricity and in turn explodes, leaving pieces of Superman's only weakness stuck in his face. I love how they have real kryptonite on set. That's good, that's commitment. It's like when they use real bones instead of props in the original Poltergeist movie. What could possibly go wrong, right? Number 9, the Wasp. We'll get the appetite going right off the bat here. Okay, Janet Van Dyne, aka the Wasp, first appeared in comics in Tales to Astonish issue 44. Genetically engineered by Dr. Hank Pym, Ant-Man, with the help of Pym particles and biosynthetic wings, now Janet was one of the founding members of the Avengers. Not too shabby. She could generate bioelectric blasts from her hand, knocking down even the fiercest of foes. But when the Blob gets a hold of her in the Ultimatum storyline, her sting just wouldn't cut it. The story comes from the Ultimates, which is already just a darker take on all of our characters and all those stories, and in it we see Earth's mightiest meeting their violent end. As for the Wasp, during the flood in New York City, she ended up being separated from the team, and when they finally found her, it was too late. She had become a midnight snack. Hank decides to get payback in a similar manner. Giant Man then grabs the Blob and Ozzy Osbourne's his head right off. Payback is gross, but necessary. And before we continue on with this list, let's brighten the mood a little bit. Maybe go and hit that thumbs up. I don't know, get some spirits back to normal. Also, it helps the channel out so much. You're the best. Thank you so much. Back to this dark list. Number 8, Batman. Coming from the 1993 Batman Nightfall storyline, we get to meet Bane in a terrifying way. He literally broke Batman. The Beast started by making Batman's worst day come to life as he freed every villain in Arkham Asylum, so now Batman's gotta try and round up all those psychopaths, which is already exhausting, and Batman's weaker now, mentally and physically. And when Bane goes to the Batcave, because yes, he knows Batman's secret identity, he beats Bruce down, and when the moment is right, he lifts the Caped Crusader above his head and drops him down onto his knee, breaking his back. Now this was a huge moment in the comics. When Batman goes down for the count, the mantle was then passed along to Azrael. And we just broke down a bunch of alternate versions of Batman in the last week or two, so make sure you go and check out one of those 3 lists as well after you're done here. Batman has had quite the run in comics. Interesting time.
Number 7, Death of Green Arrow. Ollie has died a few times, but one of the most iconic deaths of Green Arrow, I would say, comes from the late 80s to 90s series of Green Arrow. Here in issues number 100 to 101, while Oliver Queen was working to infiltrate a team of eco-terrorists, he finds himself tangled up in one of their plots and is one of the few people who can basically stop a bomb from going off and destroying Metropolis. Well, he can stop it going off in Metropolis, I should say. He can't necessarily stop it from going off, unfortunately. He ends up getting his arm stuck in the detonation chamber and is unable to remove it without the bomb going off. Superman shows up and somehow this ends up being a problem even Superman can't solve. Superman! In the end, Green Arrow chooses to sacrifice himself to protect the people of Metropolis rather than still save the people of Metropolis, but instead just lose his arm instead of, losing his whole life. I mean, okay. I personally just think DC really wanted to kill Oliver Queen for some reason at this point, because I think Superman had some plans prior to Ollie making the bomb go boom that could have, maybe worked. Bomb 1, Queen 0, I guess.
Number 6, the Hulk. Mark Millar's Old Man Logan begins in Volume 3 of Wolverine at issue 66, and this is now a future where supervillains have won. Sads. Hulk and She-Hulk had kids. weird, the Hulklings who would beat the crap out of you if you didn't pay rent, because basically everybody had their own territory, so Logan had to pay up. Hawkeye, who was also much older and now also blind, needed Logan's assistance to get across the country and deliver a secret package. This was a way Logan can make some of that rent money, so perfect, let's do it. Now when they get back from their trip, things have progressed in an awful way. Hulk Gang took out Logan's entire family because, well, they were bored, of course. They're a little messed up in the head if you didn't already piece that together. So Logan dishes out some payback. No more games, no more talking. Logan's here to now get this done. Logan gets Banner right through the old chest plate, but we all know what happens next. He freaks out, he hulks out rather, and then he eats Logan. If you can't beat him, eat him, I guess. Now you'd think this would for sure be the end of it, but that's when Logan pops out from inside Banner. After what's gonna happen to Wolverine near the end of this list, it's nice to see him come out on top, or just come out of a body in general, that's fun.
Number 5. Days of Future Past. In the Days of Future Past reality, Sentinels rule over North America. Here, many mutants are eliminated with only a few managing to survive, but still with many of them being kept in camps where they are worked until they die and are branded with an M tattoo on their face, so they will forever be recognized as a lowly mutant, unable to escape prosecution. Even many superheroes have been killed in this reality of Earth 811 because they attempted to protect mutants and put a stop on the Sentinels' reign, which also made them targets. One of the main reasons why the Sentinels are successful in taking over in this story is because of the deaths of Senator Robert Kelly, Professor Charles Xavier, and Moira McTaggart, who were all killed by the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants.
Number 4. Green Arrow. Green Lantern, Green Arrow, issue 85. Let's talk about it. The first few pages, we see Oliver Queen walking at night trying to get home when all of a sudden some punks, some fools try and rob him. Now this is a day in the park for most of our superheroes. Now it's not like he was tired or maybe he didn't see it coming like Peter, he ate too much cake. He actually was in a bad mood. He had lady troubles, he was ready to fight. He was like, okay, I'm looking for this. You guys picked the wrong guy, let's go. He's like getting warmed up. He was feeling good. And then a guy pulled out a crossbow, because you know, all those thugs that carry crossbows through the city, and then Ollie gets shot right through the shoulder with an arrow. Irony at its finest.
Number 3. Death Metal. During Death Metal, our heroes lost hardcore. That is before they won, but still, they lost at one point. They are lucky they were permitted to stick around, as that is the only way they were able to come back from such a dark place. Pun intended. Because you know it's Dark Knights, Death Metal. Get it? I'll just see myself out. During Death Metal, the trinity of Superman, Wonder Woman, and of course Batman ended up going against a Batman Who Laughs and his cohort Persephone. In the end, the first time around anyways, they lost and the world became reshaped temporarily in a darker image. The trinity were split up, with Wonder Woman reluctantly agreeing to join Batman Who Laughs. She didn't really have much of a choice. That's how she actually got her Chainsaw of Truth though, which I love that Chainsaw of Truth, it's so cool. And that's also how in the end the trinity was able to survive until a point that they could each get free and then basically rejoin back up with one another. Ultimately, Wonder Woman would sacrifice herself to save the multiverse, banishing the dark multiverse and restarting everything, setting it right again after getting a glimpse into the potential future, which we would know as Future State. But before that happened, it seemed as though the core JLA members would be trapped and defeated forever. It was a pretty hopeless time for a little bit there.
Number 2. Martian Manhunter. In Final Crisis 1, John Jones' Martian Manhunter gets trapped in a prison. See, he originally went there undercover as John Jones in his human form and would regularly report back to Batman. That's when the villains decided to break free and then he was left behind. It's not looking good at this point, because Human Flame had now given the villain Libra instructions to kill Martian Manhunter. So Libra went and he did so. He stabbed Martian Manhunter with a staff right in front of the entire staff, the entire secret society of supervillains, and then upon his death he returned back to his Martian form, and in his final moments he still managed to send that message back to the Justice League. Not even death will stop this guy's plans. The Justice League held his funeral on his home planet Mars, with Superman giving the eulogy. His final moments were expanded on in the Final Crisis Requiem storyline, teaching us more about his homeworld and the inhabitants of it. You can find this in Justice League Volume 2 in issues 6 and 7. And finally, number 1, my personal favorite, Wolverine. I mentioned Wolverine getting something bad. This is it. Now we're going to talk about it. This next one comes from Punisher Volume 6, Issue 17, appropriately titled Aim Low, written by Garth Ennis. So we find Wolverine with his face, well, without a face. His face is gone at this point. He got his face blown off by the Punisher, and you'd think that would be pretty bad, but it of course gets so much worse. Frank Castle fixes his aim a little bit lower and then pulls the trigger, reassuring Logan that they'll grow back. Frank was trying to get Wolverine out of the way, and this put him down for a bit, definitely, but he's still not out for the count just yet. Never turn your back on the knucklehead. Wolverine is literally crawling towards the Punisher now. He's like, shoot me, bomb me, cut me up, I don't care, I'm just gonna keep coming at you. Well, it's kind of hard to move when there's a steamroller on top of you, no? The fact that he did it slowly too, starting with the feet and then slowly moving it up to his head and then putting it in park when it was on his head, I can't even fathom what this would feel like. I can't pull a hangnail some days. Like a steamroller, what kind of Austin Powers way to go out is that?